I'm Christopher Sutherland. I'm an inspector with the British Transport Police. I work within our safeguarding and vulnerability unit. So I'm just going to start off just with a little quote for you here. One small act of intervention can be the bridge between despair and hope. Just wanted to reflect on that comment at the moment and think, what does that mean for you? For me, if you're interested to know what it means for me and my view of the world, my window of the world, is that irrelevant of your role in your organisation, your role in the community, your role within your family, we're all change agents when it comes to suicide prevention and mental health, and we've all got a part to play. And part of that is through taking away the stigma when it comes to talking about mental health and suicide. So has anybody heard of, in fact, before I go to that bit, what do we think is the likelihood of someone coming to die on the railway? 5% of all deaths in the UK happen on the railway. We are the third most common location for someone to die by suspected suicide. You'll hear me use the word suspected suicide because terminology is key when we're talking about this. It's important to use inclusive language which can start encouraging people to speak about this. Has anybody heard of Right Care, Right Person? What the Home Office are doing about making sure the right service are attending incidents? Well, Right Care, Right Person was introduced by a force up in the north of England, and it's about if there's a call for service that doesn't require a police attendance, then they won't go, they'll say another service should go. Unfortunately, well, for the British Transport Police, our environment by creation means that we can't, at the point of triage, say we can't go, because by design our environment is quite dangerous. And a lot of people don't know this, but a key thing for the police is that we're not designed to be attending incidents for people in crisis. We go to it by default, because we're the service of last call where all verbal communications failed, and they're calling us because we need to go and take action. So in regards to Right Care, Right Person, we have adapted our approach and we've called it mental health crisis to care. First part is control room triage, and we are looking at making sure we are the right service attending an incident, and if not, we make sure the right service are on approach. Our response, we are making sure that we've got the right operational resources, we've got the right training in place, so our officers are well engaged, they're well informed, and they've got the skills to deal with somebody in crisis, because it's completely different to how you're dealing with somebody who is perhaps engaging in some sort of criminal activity. We're also looking at the rail industry response, so we're looking at how we're reacting to it, but we're saying, how can we support you guys? How can we support you to react to persons in crisis? And that's through improving interoperability with one another, because it takes a community of different services working together to make it a suicide safer environment. And we're also looking at doing more in the prevention space. You can never do enough prevention. Arguably speaking, we've been acting in the post-prevention ever since the first report of someone dying by suicide, because it never happened before. Then someone's died, and now we're actually reacting to it and putting things in place through internal safeguarding and what we're doing. And the last bit is engagement. For us, we're engaging with all the integrated care boards around England and Wales, because we are looking to see how we can improve the service for people who were taken up to the places of safety to make sure they're getting the right care to minimise the representation on the railway. So just for some stats for you, just for the tip of the iceberg, in England and Wales, the population of 59.5 million people, how many deaths do we think there's been on the UK? You know, there's been 5,642. 456 during that year were on the railway. It's more than one a day. These are what we know, and what you know is great, but it's what you don't know, what's happening, what's underreported. 5 to 25% of all suicides are actually underreported. We don't know they're actual suicides, so there's a hidden risk there. Suicide behaviours, you're 40 to 100 times, it's 40 to 100 times greater than those who are dying by suicide. And the number of people affected by suicide is varying, but on average it's 135 people are impacted by suicide. And people with thoughts of suicide across England and Wales in 2022 was 2.9 million people. Those are people with thoughts, which shows the pressures that are on NHS, which is saying that mental health is an ongoing issue that we have to support in the community. So what are we at BTP doing to reduce suicide on the railway? We are enhancing and encouraging more prevention, so reducing things that contribute to suicide. You've all heard about protective factors. It's about what can we do to put those in place to stop people coming to the railway. We're looking to do more intervention through targeted patrols, increasing the safety of people in our community, increasing employees who are working in the community, and also ensuring we've got the safety of our officers attending incidents, because we are bereaved by suicide also, albeit we're dealing with it. And we're looking for more post-intervention. We're looking for that community support, that kind of how can we improve that working together, that partnership, working even before someone dies. How can we do that in this mental health space, working with you all to see how we can improve that interoperability. And the purpose for that is, I'll put it on the screen just the purpose for that, but it's really just to enhance the community working in this space. You can never do enough. You can never do enough comms. You can never do enough training. We have to keep the conversation going, and we have to change it. We have to change the mentality around mental health and suicide and start talking positively about the support out there and taking away those barriers. We know it's quite easy for us to manage people who have committed offences, but it's more difficult about how we support people who have got mental health, because there's not any kind of legal things we can pull on to kind of manage them. But what Network Rail have done is they've invested in BTP, and we've introduced something called the Heart Reduction Team. Has anybody heard of the Heart Reduction Team before? The Heart Reduction Team, they focus on high frequent presenters who are presenting on the railway across the UK 3 times in 8 weeks and causing the biggest disruption to the railway. So what we're doing is our main object with that is to save life and thus reduce reduction on the railway. It's a proactive response, not a reactive one to the last presentation. And on the screen I've got kind of what methods we do simultaneously to work with them. So we work with mental health, social care. The key thing is consent. When it's people with mental health, we need consent to pass on information to partner agencies, because we don't have GDPR's harder to get around when it's with persons with mental health, because you've got a right to a private life. So we have to make sure that any briefings we do has to be targeted and has to be for a proper policing purpose. And most persons who are presenting in crisis on the railway are usually suffering from emotionally unstable personality. We try to understand why, problem solve, and kind of divert appropriately to appropriate services. I've just got a bit on the right there which you can read about our positive interaction, and we've got Spock for all the agencies if they want to engage with us and see what we're doing. Even come along and join one of the meetings to see exactly what's going on. But the key crux of this is we're using empathy, active listening, and the ability to negotiate. There's a little bit more on the screen here, but at the moment, since Heart were created, we had 480 nominals were accepted and we managed them, and 444 have now been discharged, which means we're actively managing 36 people on the railway who are causing major disruption. Of that, the majority are white females aged over the age of 25. That's our average age. And we've had a couple of good positive feedbacks from those who we've worked with, which I've put up on the screen, and I won't labour the point, but I'm happy for the slides to be shared afterwards. But what we have seen is the people we're working with, we've seen a reduction in detentions under the Mental Health Act. We've seen a reduction in disruption on the railway. And this can only be positive, because if there's a disruption and nobody's dying, we're doing a job. And it means that you're reporting incidents correctly to us, and we're managing that risk together, even if we don't know the role we're playing. But a key part of that is making sure that you are well trained and you're well informed how to go about supporting it. So this is the only bit of the sales pitch I'm going to do this for you today, is how can we help you at BTP be well equipped and well trained to support persons in crisis. We want to empower you to be confident to deal with people in crisis, and that comes from having a baseline skill set of how to have a conversation. So before I go on to the next bit, I just want to raise your hands. I'm going to make a statement. I want to know if you agree with me or not. Do you agree that suicide is wrong? Put your hands up if you think suicide's wrong. Okay? Put your hand up if you think suicide's okay and people can choose to die if they want. I'm on the fence about it, because these are attitudes and behaviours which people are entitled to have. They can have it. But if we were to walk about with these attitudes on our T-shirt, what's the likelihood of people wanting to come and engage with us about mental health? What's the likelihood of people wanting to say, I'm feeling suicidal today, can you help me? So it's key that we're going to try and break that stigma and actually have the conversation. So, Network Rail, we've got the Managing Suicidal Contacts training, which is really, really good, provided by Samaritans. It gives you a good introduction to having conversations. So we encourage organisations to keep doing that. But a bolt on for what BTP are providing, which you would pay quite a lot of money for if you were to go through a private organisation doing it independently, is we've invested in myself and another colleague being assist and safe talk trained. These give you the skill sets to be able to have the conversation. The assist is a 2-day course which helps you build up the skill set to be a caregiver to someone in crisis, and the safe talk is a half-day course which allows you to be more suicide alert. There's a transit organisation in Canada who have trained all of their bus drivers to be safe talk trained, because what they understand is their role and their remit is to keep someone safe and be aware, then signpost them to the right agency. We're not all heroes, we can't do everything. If you try and do everything, you end up doing nothing, don't you? So, and the key thing about coming to BTP and how we can possibly support you is that at the moment, all talks, 9-point suicide prevention plans go via myself, and I need to sign it off. So I view exactly what's been happening, and I'm saying, like, what's the plans for the next 12 months? And part of that is including making sure that you are all well equipped to do your jobs. Because even myself, sometimes going in an incident, no matter how prepared you are, every incident's different. We can never make assumptions. And even if you go in super planned, it's going to go belly up. There's not such a thing as a perfect intervention. So we're hoping that we can play our part in helping you be well trained to deal with someone. And the key benefit of utilising us via British Transport Police is, A, you'll get me, I'll be the one delivering the training. And B, you're actually going to be getting, instead of it kind of being mainly theory-based, you're getting people with real lived experience, understanding what happens to people in crisis, and helping you close that loop of exactly what happens once you've signposted people to support. And even with officers, we don't always get it right. If we don't always get it right, how can we expect rail staff to get it right, or members of the public? And if we can support you getting the real good life skills, it'll help you also enhance suicide safety in the community. So from that, I've got nothing else I want to add today. If anybody does want to hear any more about how I can support you and how we can maybe work together going forward, feel free to reach out to me on LinkedIn, or the emails will be available at the end of this, and then we'll have a chat.
Grace, stay with us. Grab a seat, if that's okay. Can I ask either one or both of you to come back? Lisa to come back, and Liam as well. And we've also got joining our panel. We're a bit of I think we're one chair short. So we've also got joining our panel Wendy McChrystal from the Mental Health Company as well. So a really quick overview this afternoon of some of the mental health and also wider occupational health issues that we face as an industry. So has anybody got any questions for our panel? Sorry, it was really quiet and silent. Right, yeah, we can finish early if that's fine. I'm going to start off with going back to Lisa with some of your statistics. So you put up a slide which showed, it was a pie chart showing the percentages of why people are off with ill health. Can you just tell us a little bit more about one or two of the bigger chunks on that slide? Because I think I could probably read the little writing at the side of the really big chunk, but probably people in the audience might struggle, because I'm conscious we've got some sun in here as well. So what's the biggest cause of sickness?
The biggest reason actually isn't a reason at all. So we know there's a lot of unknown sickness absence in the industry. I think our last quarter, it was about 28% of all recorded absences are for unknown reasons. But if we ignore that, the main issue at the moment is MSDs. I think it was about 16% for all MSDs, so back problems, other fractures. And then second to that is mental well-being and mental health. So it's nothing too surprising at all.
Yeah, so does everybody know what MSD stands for? So musculoskeletal diseases, yeah. So basically, it's your a lot of back pain, often backs, particularly when you get to my age. Thank you. Have we got any other? Anybody else want to make any observations on that, or should I just open it up to any other questions? Any questions?
Going to the drug testing idea, how do you introduce that in a company whilst preserving people's sort of mental health safety and not creating a culture of suspicion and distrust?
Yeah, so it was quite interesting. Like I said, we did one of the blockades, and there was naturally we thought, oh, how are people going to actually take this, especially the workers out there on the grounds? And it was the most positive feedback, as we talked about. I think because they understood it was there for their own safety and protection to support them, they really took it on board. And we had even comments such as, I've not been drug tested and I've been, working on the rail for 8 years. Because obviously it's random, but we just did everybody. So as they signed in at the SACS cabin, they then moved on to us and just did the drug testing. I think they felt safer and acknowledging that their colleagues were supporting them. Because when you're out on site, if somebody makes one wrong decision, and obviously they're under the influence of drugs, even if it's been, 5 hours ago they were taking cannabis or cocaine, whatever it might be, the drug of choice, as we notice more and more people do it more than alcohol at the moment, which is absolutely shocking for me, to be honest with you. I think they'll feel actually they've, their minds, they're thinking straight, the decisions that they make are going to be the right decisions, rather than them having, drugs within their system and potentially making a decision which could, either injure them or end their life.
Can I just say, and I think it's really important to point out it's a massive preventative tool. So it's about proactively setting expectation. So, I can remember the day I landed in the rail industry. I'd worked in manufacturing for 7 years, and it was like, oh, this is different. Okay, and it was just setting the expectation of people coming into the industry that this is what we expected, and I think that's a big part of it.
And what we did notice, so we did it one night, actually Leanne, my colleague, was out that night as well. The next night, people just automatically, signed in, then went to do the drug testing. It was just as if they got used to it. It was just the routine, and they knew we were there to protect them. We weren't there to catch them out. Nobody was doing anything of the sort. It was all about each and every one of us getting home safe every single day. And that's our motto, and it's the railway's motto as well.
Yeah, I think for me, one of the really interesting things is that people realising that actually it's about all the people around them that are being tested and safe as well. I think, and that plays into probably what Liam was talking about in terms of people, working together and being prepared to share their thoughts, how they feel, but also any issues that they see, because it just feels like it's that community. You've got a microphone now. I think Monica is now expecting you to say something.
But there was no question.
No, so you don't have to say anything if you want to, but I just thought it played really well into that, space.
I would say that I absolutely agree with Wendy. It is about that reduction, that prevention of issues. My son doesn't work in the rail industry, but he works as a vulcanizer doing, working in quarries. So there is random drug testing. Now, one of the things that he says, he's worked with a number of different companies. He's now set up his own company. But he's worked with a number of different companies. And one of the things he said is loads of them who are under the age of 30 are using drugs at weekends and even while they're at work. And that's a shocking thing for me, that happens. And it's that being random and being that they're going onto site to do a job, they're not employed directly by different companies, they're coming in as contractors, it's being missed. So I think something as simple as this, that, I've taken one of your leaflets to hand to him. I think something as simple as this that would speed up the process will reduce the risk of harm to other people, because it does put into people's minds, I will get caught, I will lose my job, it's important. But ultimately, it's about protecting everybody else that they're working with and working for.
Okay, any other questions for the panel? We've got one at the back and then the lady down here. Or the lady down here and then one at the back, whichever.
Hi, my message is for Chris, or I suppose it can go to any of you really. Do you, and apologies if you mentioned this earlier, do you have any materials that can be downloaded for organisations to help support them in educating their staff and the wider community, I suppose?
Well, a lot of it kind of comes from kind of your public ICBs. They kind of lead a lot of what's happening locally where you are. But what we do within the British Transport Police is we routinely have kind of meetings, and we try to encourage the kind of interoperability. But a part of the issue is that a lot, even within BTP, along the rail industry, everyone's still working in silos. You can have two agencies working side by side, and it's two totally different suicide performance plans. But what we're trying to do is we're trying to drive that national kind of identity of what we're doing. So we're reviewing the suicide prevention plans with the DFT, and we're working with Network Rail to see, well, how can we get that national idea and we can all kind of operate within that. But we're not, and it's just about constantly having that conversation and saying, well, what information there is available, but it's about having something. We're sending people out there to work, and they've not been given the appropriate training to deal with anybody. They're not given the appropriate, well, what is my remit? Am I overreaching when I'm dealing with someone here? What is my role in prevention? For example, an officer's role is we keep someone safe, we take them to the person who can then actually give them the care. Because by design, you've got doctors, clinicians who are there to actually provide that clinical care. We can't do it. If we can't do it, we can't expect rail industry staff to do it either. So how is that fair to anyone to get them well informed? So it's a continual conversation. The training's always kind of going on around it. And I kind of asked that question kind of during my presentation about who thought suicide was wrong, who thought it was right. The reason for that, and it links kind of into the drug testing here, is that when you're effectively training people, you're trying to get people to change their attitudes towards certain things, because these are the things that are blockers in for doing meaningful, real change. It's people's lived experience, and I'll keep going back to people's window of the world. I always say to people that, when I'm doing presentations, when they look at me, they're thinking there's a 40-year-old white privileged man up there doing something. But behind the person, they don't know a father. They've got a dad who's, during my formative years as a teenager, was sectioned in a mental health hospital for 4 years. They don't know my house was burnt down when I was 16. I present myself well, but I've got a lot of trauma in the background. I'm just as susceptible to anybody we see at 2 a.m. on the railway in crisis. I'm just as susceptible to that, but people just don't seem to want to be having that conversation. And it's through that effective training that we can possibly do that. And I go back to say that managing suicidal contacts training for Samaritans is a really good gateway one to start that conversation, and I'll really encourage people for that.
Thank you, Chris. One of the things that we've done as part of our Social Week is we've got some podcasts. So on Monday, we launched a podcast between Andrew Haynes and Will Rogers, who's our chair, who's also the MD of East Midlands Railway. And they're talking about health and safety on the railway generally. It's a really interesting 20 minutes if you want to listen to that. Particularly interesting from Andrew's background and some of the experiences that he brought in from aviation as well. But yesterday, we released a second podcast, which was very much focusing around mental health. And it's an interview-ish between one of our engagement managers, Laura, with a chap called Richard Clinic, who some of you may know. Richard is the editor of Modern Railways. And Richard is talking about his personal journey with his mental health. He's very, very open about his challenges. And we need people like that to be prepared to be open and talk and explain to us how it feels from their perspective. Because we all make assumptions. Well, why do you feel like that? And it's really difficult to put yourself into somebody else's shoes. Yeah. So if you've got, again, it's about 20 minutes, 25 minutes long. If you've got 25 minutes to spare, do go and have a listen to that. It's incredibly powerful as a listen, because it's a very personal story from Richard. And I think there are some links to some online resources as well, which, I mean, there's lots and lots of stuff out there, there's just a few there. But I would absolutely recommend, if you're interested in the subject, to find out more and to hear it from someone who's been through some really tough times and how they tackled it and what they found was the most useful in terms of the help and support that they could access. I would absolutely recommend that to you. The third podcast will be out later in July, because we haven't yet been able to record it, but that will be around violence towards women and girls, because that's another big issue on the railway, sadly. So do have a listen to those podcasts. But anyway, sorry, this lady had a question.
Hi, this is a question for Chris. I was just curious to know, BTP officers obviously are frontline and they face quite a lot of stuff, antisocial behaviour as well as suicide. What is in place for them in the workplace to look after themselves?
So this is a key thing also about making sure that your staff are well equipped, because it's all great worrying about people out in the community, but if we're not well equipped to be there for our colleagues, how can we help other people? If we can't look after ourselves and have self-care and have that support mechanism in place, how can we possibly provide that for our communities? So within the British Transport Police, we have an internal safeguarding process in place. What that means is that if there's any managers have got a concern for someone because of an incident or something, a major life factor that's going on, then what we do is we do an internal kind of quick time management meeting to say, well, what support can we put in place for them? So that can be a referral. So every time there's been a death in the railway, we refer people into TRIM, so TRIM managers, so we'll have that contact. But again, it's an opt-in, it's not an opt-out. I'd prefer if it was an opt-out kind of option. But then we've also got occupational health and different kind of support mechanisms in that place to kind of support it. And then the Railway Mission, I must say the Railway Mission are the only organisation which have actually closed the loop with me. I'm sharing information with lots of partners, and Liam's the only one who sends me an email saying this is what I've done with information. Now, it's credit to you that you've done that, because no one else is doing it, and that's really important for us. But I guess the key thing is that we do need to be looking out for each other, and if we're not doing that self-care, we can't work with our communities, and yous are just as important. That's the key thing, that's what he's saying. There's a plethora of different organisations that can help you out, do internal, external, but the barrier sometimes is you've got organisational kind of history, organisational knowledge of good practice, bad practice, and somebody's trying to make a one-size-fits-all kind of approach, and it can't really kind of be that. But the key thing is just having that conversation. And I'm happy when I share with people about, I've never had a triggering event yet which has caused me to have suicidal thoughts, which would then lead on to behaviours and maybe action. But I know what my trigger event will be, and I know what my method would be, but that doesn't mean I'm in crisis. For me, I'm happy to share that anything which happened to any of my two young boys where I was a part to play and was an influence would be a really triggering event, and I don't know what space I would be in mentally to deal with that. But then I know how I would, if I was to do something with myself and a method which would be not as traumatic for other people who may be impacted by it. But I've got those attitudes and those beliefs, and I've got that self-awareness, I'm aware of it, but if I knew that happened, I've got that ability to then maybe say, like, I need help, but sometimes I would need a colleague who's well-informed and well-equipped to say, Chris, are you okay? What's going on? To be able to kind of pull me away from that and support me, because a key thing I want to mention is that nobody wants to die. What it is people just don't know how to deal with what they're living with right now. And it's our ability to say, well, pulling on that string of what's positive in your life, what's going on, can we put in that protective factor to support you? And that's what we do with occupational health and things inside policing. We try and group together as a family to do that, and as a wider railway family, we try to put that in place. And one thing we do externally is whenever someone's bereaved by suicide in England and Wales, we do, it's called implied consent. So we got around GDPR where someone's died in the railway, we will automatically refer bereaved persons into bereavement support around England and Wales. And then instead of opting out with the police, because I don't know when somebody needs support, and how are they in the right place of mind to say, I need bereavement support right now? The professionals are best placed to do that because they're the right care, right service to do that. So we have to understand our remit and what we can do, and that's signposting people to the right agencies. I don't know if anyone else has got anything about their internal policies they're happy to share about.
Can I just to add to what Chris has said, as a railway mission, we follow up every fatality on the railway, and that includes the rail staff, network rail staff, stations, etc. It also includes British Transport Police. And many years ago, within BTP, the welfare officer used to send out a letter to people to say, you've been involved in an incident, here is the support that's available. When they changed the system, she was no longer able to access the names, and the letters stopped going out. Up to that point, nobody ever got in touch with her to say, oh yes, I need help. But the moment the letters stopped going out, people were contacting her saying, I haven't had my letter. Where's my letter? What's often important for the mental health and well-being of people is not necessarily full-blown counselling support, but the knowledge that somebody cares enough to be in touch. And that is very, very important. And that goes back to what I was saying earlier about psychological safety, the open door policy, making sure you have those touch points with staff to be able to say, I know you're going through something, we're here. Might not have the answers, but we can signpost you. Chaplaincy doesn't have all the answers. We'll signpost. The police don't have all the answers, but they can signpost. What's important is communication and dialogue.
Thank you. Any last questions before we wrap up? No, it's some quite important thoughts, I think, for people to take away. So could I just ask you to thank our panellists and speakers again in the usual way, and then we'll wrap up. So thank you, everybody. Thank you very much for joining us. So apologies, I'm standing in front of Wendy here. Just a couple of last quick messages from me. As part of Rail Safety Week, this is really changing the tone totally now. As part of Rail Safety Week, we run some children's competitions. That's about trying to get young people to think about safety on the railway, and there's a whole range of different initiatives that do that in a very formal way. The Rail Safety Week Children's Competitions is quite an informal way, so it's colouring competition for 2 different age groups, and then a designing station competition for slightly older age groups. All the resources for those competitions are on the Rail Safety Week website. So please, if you've got children, if you've got grandchildren, if you've got nephews, nieces, if you've got any connections to your local schools, please go and have a look on the Rail Safety Week website. Signpost those relevant people to the resources that are on there. They can download the colouring competition, and there's some super prizes for the children. But it's really about getting them to start thinking about safety on the railway. So do try and signpost people to those. And the final sort of word from me is thank you to our partners today, Rail Live, obviously, who are our key partner this year from a rail safety perspective, but also to RSSB and DFT, who are sponsoring the podcast that I mentioned and the children's competition. Without that sort of support, we can't do all the various things that we do. And finally, thank you to you for being here, and enjoy the rest of Rail Live. If you're back tomorrow, enjoy tomorrow. It's going to be even hotter tomorrow, so make sure you bring plenty of sun cream and water. But thank you very much for joining us this afternoon, and have a safe journey home. Thank you.